GOGI, GOGI. Learn those tools, real lessons to live by.
Welcome, everyone. My name is GOGI Mom Carolyn, and this is a recording of some of our GOGI people.
I am so super stoked to have one of our very first GOGI institutional supporters with us. Hello.
Yes, this is marvelous.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Coach Jeff, before we get started, why don't you tell us how the job prospects are going? How's your training? How is everything? And you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
All right, here I am.
How's the job training going?
It's going pretty well. I'm at this place called America's Works, and I'm trying to get some good lighting here. And I'm trying to get the professional lighting, like Coach.
Oh.
There's a place called America's Works, and it's going good. I graduate tomorrow from that, and I've gotten a couple good job leads, and so everything's going good. It's not like I talked to you about. It's like I want it done yesterday, but I'm being patient. I'm taking my time.
So since you've been out, which GOGI tool have you used more than others?
Oh, well, Watch My Brain, Barely Breathing, and probably What If. What if I do this? What if I do that? Because I have so much different choices to make now.
Yes.
I've had to really decipher which ones I want to really do and which one I want to do, but it's not in my best interest. So I'm trying to look to my future goals and use my what if tool to make the choices that are going to get me there, the best way possible.
I love it. Spoken like a true GOGI coach.
Yeah.
That's why we have a 0 recidivism rate. Our coaches never get rearrested. And this is why, because you're living the GOGI way. Today, I am so very, very excited to have on the screen, you see him as Roel Garcia. I knew him as Officer Garcia. And I just, I'm so grateful to this man and so excited that he would actually come on and share part of his GOGI experience with us. The story of how we met might be something that he can highlight, but just to suffice it to say that he is a captain now with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He knows GOGI almost as good as you do, Coach James, maybe not quite, but pretty close to how you know GOGI. And he's actually been with GOGI longer than you, Coach James, longer than you, Coach Jeff, and even longer than GOGI Mom, not quite as long as I have. So Captain Garcia, would you mind just introducing yourself and talking just a little bit about how you came across GOGI? I know my story of when I first met you, but I have not heard your story of how you first came in contact with GOGI.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here and glad to see everybody on the screen. And for those of you that may be watching at a later time, it's been a while, but it was a long time ago. And I had a wonderful supervisor by the name of Sergeant Grady Macknick, who said, hey, I need you to meet this woman that I met at a book fair. I think it was an LA Times book fair over the weekend. She's going to call and she's going to come in for a meeting and we're going to talk to her. Maybe we can get some help with some of our programming here in LA County, in our LA County jail system. So the meeting happened and Coach Taylor walked in, and I still remember her wanting to be, referred to as Coach. And I think I was a little hesitant. I kept calling her Mara, and they kept referring to Coach, and I kept calling her Mara. And so that started us off. And I thought, what is this whole Coach thing about? And she talked about what GOGI was. And of course, none of us could say GOGI. We were all calling it GOGI. And we were trying to figure this whole thing out. And she just came in with ideas and a different mindset and different philosophy. And I thought, there's no way this is going to work in LA County. There's just no way. At the time, we had an inmate count of probably anywhere between 18,000+ folks who were incarcerated in our LA County jails. And I thought there's no way that this is going to take, but let's try it. So after a few meetings we had here at our offices, we went down to the women's jail in Linwood, California, Century Regional Detention Facility, CRDF. And we started to look to see how this would operate. We decided to put together a GOGI campus, and memory serves me correct, it was 2,200 pod 4, and that pod housed 24 women. And we decided to give Coach Taylor the run of the place, and we said, "What do you want to do?" And she says, "I want a full campus immersion. I want a class president, and I want a cheer, and I want, a mantra, and I want them to come in and explain what GOGI is to any visitor that comes in. And this campus is going to run as close to, full capacity as could be," and all these ideas and everything. And not that I was pessimistic about it, but I thought there's just no way this is going to happen. Nobody is going to buy into this. And then I read the book, because I hadn't read the book yet. Then I read the book, and I still remember reading it, and it was over the course of about 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I came back to work Monday, and I said, wow, this is going to work. And not only is it going to work, it's going to work for everybody that GOGI touches. And I immediately saw, person after person, each woman in that pod, I saw the development of their belief in themselves, their belief in their fellow human being. I saw the development of camaraderie, not only amongst those in the campus, but those working inside the campus, the officers and deputies that were working there. And it was simple. And somebody said it earlier, it was as simple as, belly breathing, learning how to breathe, being the boss of your brain, that 5-second light switch, all the GOGI tools that we've learned in reading that book, to watch people actually utilize them and talk about them and discuss them and share them with their family. I think the most important thing for me out of that first month really was how many people told me that on the phone and in visits, they were telling their loved ones, their supporters, about this program called GOGI. And we saw it take off, and it was just amazing to see. And everyone that touched it, like I said, from volunteers that came in on their own time to teach a class, to come in and just talk to the women. And then for the women to say, not only am I not going to come back to jail, but I'm going to go be of service to people. I'm going to go be of service to my community. We had someone in there who was a grandmother that said, I just want to go home and be a grandmother. That's it. So it was beautiful. It was powerful. And I was hooked from that moment on.
And you and I have been friends ever since, Ray. You watched GOGI grow when we left Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and went into CDCR, and then have just gone nationally with it. You've watched it, but yet you've kept certain aspects of it alive. I understand that you still have some interest for GOGI at the county jail. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we did the GOGI campus at our women's facility, and it was a great pilot. It was a great success. To this day, I still keep in contact with some of those women there who have gone on to do successful things, and their mothers and grandmothers, and they're employed, and they're doing great things of service to help their communities. It was a blessing to get invited to christenings and birthdays and weddings, and just to be there and watch these women, again, become successful in their community. So that was awesome. So we said, let's try it with the men at Men's Central Jail. And we started GOGI at Men's Central Jail back in, I think it was around 2011. And we had a very successful run at Men's Central Jail. We had great volunteers that came in. Actually, one of our volunteers that taught GOGI at Men's Central Jail was one of the participants at the Linwood facility. And that was Coach Maria. And she came in with her husband, Coach David, and they came into Men's Central Jail and taught GOGI. And the coolest thing is, as time has gone on, as the years have gone on, the administration's changed. There's been different, supervisors and things, just the turnover is so high here. Recently, I was telling this to Coach, in my current capacity of where I'm at, I had one of my officers come up to me and say, "Hey, sir, there was a particular inmate that came by processing out of the system," meaning he was being released from prison, had to come to LA County, and he was going to get released after doing his prison sentence. And he wanted me to give you a message, and he wanted to say thank you. Please tell, if you know Roel Garcia, tell him I said thank you, because he brought GOGI into my life. And this was someone that went through the GOGI program at Men's Central Jail and did everything and read the book and did all the assignments, turned them all in, got graded, and then went on to state prison to complete a sentence. But he kept those tools with him as part of his toolbox, and he utilized those tools to successfully, learn everything he needed to learn and to really learn how to re-enter our communities here. So it was a great message to get, and that was recent. So it's been some time. It's been quite a few years that he's been utilizing those tools.
There's so many things that I want to say, but I kind of wanted our beautiful, wonderful group of people, G-Rep Justin, Coach Johnny, Stacy, Coach Jeff, Coach James, and GOGI Mom, to maybe ask you a question or two about what struck you the most, or whatever. Does somebody have a question for Captain Garcia? And don't be asking when you can come in to lead GOGI. They all want to come in. I promise you, they all want to go inside the jail and work with your men and your women. That's
Absolutely.
that's for sure. So we'll have to make that happen. But who had a question?
I got a question. Hi, my name is Coach James. I'm formerly incarcerated lifer. First of all, Captain, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
It's a privilege. When I was hearing you talk, like in the book with love, a lot of the women that you're talking about and that you connected with, I was introduced to them through the book. So because I become like a bit of like a GOGI historian, so I know the effect, because those tools and how the GOGI campus affected my life. As a correctional officer at the time when it was first introduced, were you ever able to actually interact in the meeting or in the campus with them in their meetings, or was it more like a supervisors type thing?
No, it was interaction. So when the campus was created, and we were trying to fill the calendar and all the volunteers and the coordination of people coming in, it was just an idea exchange and flow of what would work. Let's try it. I think at one time we had, a guitar in there, and we had, GOGI yoga was starting, and we had guest speakers come in, and it was about trying to do a full immersion campus. Our idea was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. when they did that last count for the night, and that's 2 different shifts, for them to be fully immersed in. And I don't want to use the word programming as a negative, because we didn't see it as programming. We saw it as different opportunities for people to come in and really learn something and really share. So whether it was a block of writing in their journal, if it was creating ideas, creating the GOGI song, I was there for that. Creating the welcome and how they would welcome a guest in, because as this thing started to really pick up, we had a lot of guests. Coach Taylor can remember, we had an influx of not only people from within our department as far as executives, but a lot of people from the community heard about it. We also had, at that time, it was one of our oversight committees that came in and wanted to evaluate it, and they did a report that's a public report, and they talked about how great of a program it was and how it should be expanded. But this was all done with $0. the department, the county provided $0. There was no budget. This was, Coach Taylor and folks that donated their money and their time to come in. So yes, I had a lot of interaction with the participants. And then we also did a Saturday session outside of custody. It was at CRDF, but it was outside of security. And we had that open every Saturday for about 4 to 5 hours for not only those that were part of GOGI, but they can bring their family members in. So their family members can come and talk. And it was kind of like, just to exchange, how things are going and, who needs some help, some services. So we try to bring in different people to help. And again, that was a beautiful thing because that's where I met, Coach David, when he had, said, hey, I've been talking to my wife and she's talking about this GOGI thing and I want to see what this is all about. And so we had family members and, their loved ones and supporters that would come to these meetings and just to hear more about what GOGI was and what it really meant to be of service. So that was an awesome thing to be a part of.
Another question?
Yeah.
Coach Jeff.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Coach Jeff Ward. I want to thank you first and foremost for being here with us. I'm also a formerly life inmate. I was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and GOGI changed my life so I could be here with you all today. My question is, you shared when you first started talking about GOGI and how it came in, had a certain level of apprehension about how the success of GOGI and even probably letting it into the facility. Can you speak a little bit about what that apprehension was and maybe what you would say to other jail or prison officials that are having that same type of apprehension and why they should let GOGI into their institution? Sure.
And that's a great question. My apprehension was one from, based on my training and experience. And that's what, in law enforcement, we always talk about our training and experience. The ideas that, first came out of, a full immersion program, from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep, letting them get all these services and let people come in and instruction and everything. It sounds great. Logistically, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to do. And, from our side of it, it's, we have shift change and we have, meals to be served and, pill call and all those types of things that go on, in our setting. And then to have folks from the outside come in, there's always going to be apprehension with, officer safety, right? And the safety of the institution itself. So that goes without saying. But for me personally, I think the apprehension was, do I see men and women who have been incarcerated, institutionalized, and, everybody's got a different terminology, right? Here in LA County, we use the term inmates. Some folks want to be referred to as convicts, some, and then there's other, now we call folks patients and, other terms that are used. It's really about, can we do this and still be safe and still be in a place that we can have order, for lack of a better term, right? And I thought, and again, the ideas was, do I see any of our folks wanting to get up and do a GOGI cheer? At the time, I thought, no, it's not going to happen. I didn't think we were going to have a GOGI cheer. I didn't really think we were going to have folks getting up and giving their testimony, because in corrections, when you talk about correctional education, it's really just instruction. And that's it. It's, you're the student, you're in a seat, we're going to instruct, and you're going to learn, and then we move on. GOGI isn't instruction. GOGI, as all of you know, is really getting in there and doing a deep dive of self-inventory and expressing yourself. And when you express yourself with what you've read, what you've seen, what you've been taught, what you've heard, and that experience of the interaction, GOGI pulls that out of you, pulls that interaction piece out that allows people to have that free flow of information exchange, talking about the tools, because where maybe belly breathing is the #1 tool for someone, maybe the 5-second light switch is, the #1 tool for someone else, or being the boss of your brain. So everyone has their number 1, 2, and 3, so to speak. But that exchange of information, that back and forth, I didn't expect that. That was my apprehension. I thought there's no way that people are going to exchange that kind of dialogue. And to, you know, my surprise, and it was a very awesome surprise, it was happening. And I've seen it, you know, I've seen it all the way through. Everyone that I've given a GOGI book to, I've spoken to after, and we talk about that exchange of the tools that they, not only that they learned, but the tools they utilize and what's, you know, their number 1, 2, and 3.
Cool. Any more questions for our captain? Yes, Stacy. Stacy and then GOGI Mom.
Well, Jeff kind of asked part of what my question was about your apprehension when it was, you know, kind of first brought to you. But as a follow-up to that, I live in Oregon. I live in Portland. I haven't really found much of a GOGI presence here. So what was it initially about Coach Taylor's presentation to you that kind of got you to say, wait, I'm going to stop and listen to this? A little background in Portland, a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, or maybe whatever the election was before that, the voters here in Portland decided it would be a good idea to legalize drug use, all drug use, heroin, you know, whatever, in small quantities, with the idea that instead of arresting them, they'll go to a treatment facility. Unfortunately, they enacted that law before there were treatment facilities, but the point is the law is still there, and there's still all that money, and they're still trying to get it together. So what was it about Coach Taylor's presentation that maybe I could present to these burgeoning treatment facilities to get them to look into GOGI and maybe incorporate that into one of these treatment centers, somewhere that's going to pop up with this millions of dollars that are there. It hasn't happened yet, but it's supposedly going to. So I work with people in recovery, and I do tell about the tools. I'm not allowed to have GOGI meetings. It's been established, but I talk about it all the time. And so I just would really like to try to present this to other people in Portland, especially because we have that law, and we haven't really done anything with the treatment money. So far, all it's really done was invited people from all over the country to come and live on our streets. So it's a needed thing.
Right.
I'm not sure. I just want to be able to present it. Like, I guess I want to know what it was how it was presented to you that made you want to start embracing it.
Well, to be perfectly candid, the very first thing that was an instant yes is it was a turnkey operation, because Coach Taylor came in and said, this is going to cost you guys a thing. We're going to come in here, we're going to do this, and it's not going to cost you anything. We're going to get books donated. We're going to have volunteers to come in. So, you know, in our setting, we were paying a school district to come in and provide GED type of classes and things like that to our population, which cost us millions of dollars. This was something different. This was a no cost turnkey campus, and it was full immersion. So it wasn't going to cost us anything other than we were still already going to be staffing that pod. We were still going to be doing the same, you know, work as far as the security side of it. But that was the very first thing. Okay, so put the money aside. At the next selling point was really watching it. Just an investment of time. And it was a small investment of time to sit there on a Saturday and watch the volunteers interact with the women at CRDF. And again, 2, 3, 4 years later at Men's Central Jail, and to watch, you know, these men of all different classifications, all different races, all different. And again, Men's Central Jail is just, it's its own community, right? To watch them come together and read a book that is very simple to read. It's an easy read. And then to talk about it, being led by a coach and going over the tools and talking about what the tools mean to you or what did you learn. And then people give their testimony. People started talking like, this is how I can use this tool. Or last night I used this tool when the commissary people came and my order was wrong. I used my 5-second light switch, and instead of yelling at them, you know, I stopped and I paused and I thought about my positive thoughts, words, and actions. And I did this. And guess what? They gave me a full refund. They never did that before. So to hear them, you know, just feel this sense of like, I learned something and it's working. That's what really did it for me. And again, that was just an investment of time. And
So
it
yeah,
didn't cost us anything.
the long game a little bit in terms of seeing results. So
and so I think what you got to do is you got to get some folks who you're presenting it to learn what GOGI is about. And here's what's going to happen, because it happened to me. You start using it in your personal life. And use it in personal life. So I was using it at home as being a father, and then I'm bringing that to work. And they always tell us, don't bring home to the workplace, and vice versa. But when you have these tools, you know, and all that term of the tools of tolerance, you know, it gave me the ability, it gave me and reinforced things that I already had, but now to bring it into the workplace and say, okay, let me teach you something, or let's talk about it. More importantly, that was the greatest thing. And I think anytime you can challenge people to be of service and they start picking up on that, it's a great thing. So getting the administration to do a little time investment, and then they'll get it. We've seen folks get it. I've seen officers and deputies and supervisors get it. And then they want to see folks succeed. You know, unfortunately, we see folks at their lowest moments in their life when they're incarcerated, you know, and they're coming back from court, they're getting life, they're getting bad news from home in a visit or in a phone call or in a letter, you know, a Dear John, a Dear Jane letter. And then we're dealing with that as well as, you know, whoever's receiving that information is dealing with it. But to have these types of tools to utilize and then just to communicate, I think it's a great communication piece.
GOGI Mom?
What I was going to say is that Justin had his hand up. I just wanted to acknowledge he wanted to speak.
Justin.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you know, being a part of the program and interacting with it, and I see you know the tools yourself, so you know the benefit of them, and inmates send a message to you thanking you for introducing them to them. You know, knowing that they work and everything, all the men here in the group tonight we all serve life sentences. We've all turned our lives around. We live lives of service today. I'm wondering, do you have a program going on now in the jail? And if not, why?
Well, we have several programs. So that's, to answer your question, we have several programs. What I had informed Coach of, and she didn't know this until a phone conversation we had about a week ago, is we had GOGI at Men's Central Jail, right? Which is our one of our larger facilities here in LA County, 5,000 plus inmates. And we had a GOGI program, and that kind of went away, wow, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. But we have an officer here that had went through it, read the book, you know, practices the tools. And about 1.5 years ago now, he asked if he can, you know, do GOGI classes. So it wasn't an assignment. It was something he wanted to do as basically like a collateral duty, as part of doing his job. And he's been leading GOGI classes, and he's had small classes where he only had 3 participants and it swelled up to 12. But it's just because, you know, he advertises it and he puts it out there, and then folks come in and people, you know, you tell a friend and people start coming in. But he's been doing this on his own. He hasn't asked for anything. We have a library and we have GOGI books there, so he's utilizing those books. But he's been doing it, again, as a collateral duty on his own. And to his credit, you know, he does an amazing job, an amazing job. We'd like to see it in all our facilities. we'd like to see, you know, not only the men at Men's Central Jail, but the women. We'd like to see also our folks that have mental health issues. We'd like to see a GOGI program for them as well.
Well, I think we have some ample volunteers here on the screen, and Coach James is raising his hand. He wants to volunteer. He wants to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I did, if you allow, I do have like another question.
Yeah.
So since part of our challenge, part of the challenge for me since being released is I've been dealing with primarily formerly incarcerated family members and people that have been affected by our crime. So the victim advocacy end, but also too, I've been involved in circles with sergeants and correctional officers and actually had them involved in activities, which was really transformative in both my life and the correctional officer's life. Just like I've heard you talk about. We want to open these tools up to the larger community, which includes correctional officer staff, which includes family members and the formerly incarcerated, and bridging this gap and taking that. Do you ever see maybe your officers and like participating and learning these tools amongst themselves to actually have like I talk about the keywords, like that's the language we're talking about when we exchange the keywords, rather than say, boss of my brain, I'm able to articulate that I have 3 parts of my brain. And if I'm in the smart part or the emotional part or the old habit, I think centrally, I think a correctional officer's tool would probably be the tool for give. In order for me to give, I must be safe from harm, right? The safety and security of the stuff. Do you see this actually moving past not only the mental health, the incarcerated, the patient, the inmate, the convict, but also into your staff members' lives?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about is, you know, staff development. And I definitely see it being part of staff development, something that we can do on the front end for our new officers, and then in-service training for those deputies that have already been on the job, and then we send them to that training. You know, when we do this type of training, this in-service training, or when we do it, you know, maybe right when they get out of the academy, which is the key point to our deputies. When they're out of the academy, they're fresh, they've learned things. You know, we teach a lot of really forward-thinking things here in LA County. We have divert, how to de-escalate a situation, you know, before it even escalates to a use of force. We're already looking how to de-escalate. And some of that de-escalation involves a tactical retreat. Like, hey, let's back off. Let's give them a few minutes. You know, they're upset. So let's just wait before we have to go to the next step. That stuff is being done here in LA County now. But what you're talking about, the staff development, is key, because right now, if I were to ask the room, that all of us that are here in Zoom, how many of us are parents, and the hands go up, you know, I do that with my folks who are in a class setting and my officers and deputies, and the hands go up, and I say, there's one thing we all have in common. Now, how many of us want to see our children in a locked setting? And there no hands go up, right? So we talk about what we have in common. So let's talk about the commonalities before we talk about the differences. And that's how we get folks to understand that we have to be tolerant of what's going on, and we have to really how do we develop this? So, you know, when I talk to folks, you know, who work for me, I have 1,200 people that work for me in the area I'm responsible for. You know, when I give them an orientation, or when I do the in-service training, you know, we see our folks that come in here in a locked setting on their worst day ever. They were just arrested. They're coming back from court and they just got a sentence. So give them some time before you give them an instruction to, you know, do whatever they need to do, and understand that there's a lot of emotion behind that. And trying to get to the human factor, that's the key with GOGI, is that human factor. And again, it's not just instruction. It's not a lesson. It's the human factor. It's teaching them something new, but it's that dialogue that really gets people together. And when somebody gets up and gives their testimony, that's the greatest thing. And that's where I've seen our staff, you know, those wearing, you know, a different uniform than a jumpsuit, where they get it, because then they start empathizing and sympathizing and saying, yeah, actually my brother, my uncle, my aunt, so on and so forth, went through something similar. And that's where the key is. So staff development is definitely key.
I have a question for you, Captain.
Sure.
I've met so many very, very helpful officers in my 20 years career of going in and out of prisons all over the place, including Romania. I've seen and experienced the best of what officers have to offer. But when I leave, sometimes the emotions between the incarcerated and the officer brings out the worst in people. What we train our GOGI coaches, what we train our GOGI students is that they need to be their best, so encourage the best out of an officer. So my question is this: what would you recommend? This will be aired on YouTube and correctional facilities, and actually officers will watch it when they're interested in starting GOGI. What is your recommendation for someone who is incarcerated to understand that the person with the badge is what? Who is the person with the badge, and how can they best interact with them to increase the amount of harmony and increase the collaboration, increase that human factor that you talked about?
The very simplistic answer is to recognize that that's your brother and sister. That's somebody that is also going through things. We get to come in, we get to come in, do our job and leave, but it affects us as well. The human condition of what we see, it affects us. What we witness, when we see someone suffering, even though we may not articulate it, maybe we don't write it down, it still affects us. Some of us keep it inside. Some of us go home and debrief and talk to our loved ones about it, or we talk to peers about it. But it's that human condition that I think, in talking to folks that have went through GOGI and read the books and done the exercises, they're more tolerant, they're more patient because they've gotten it, or they're getting it, they're understanding it. And sometimes we have to be patient with those that don't. And sometimes that includes our officers, those in a different uniform, that they don't understand it yet. And they're looking, remember, they're looking with a very keen eye to see, okay, maybe something's going on here. What's happening? Why are these people changing? Why all of a sudden they acting different? That's just the human instinct in us that, let's see if we can find something off. And all it takes is time to realize, okay, no, there is some change happening here. And I have seen a difference in that person's attitude or in their behavior. And, they're saying all these things. Now let's see if they practice what they preach. But it's that dialogue back and forth. And I've had folks in LA County here that have gone through GOGI, and I've had really long discussions with them, like, what is it for you? And what is it that captured you? What is it that gave you the encouragement to stand up and give your testimony that you just, said some pretty amazing things and powerful things? And they're like, honestly, I was able just to release a bunch of things that I needed to, because again, talking about that escaping your prison in your mind is huge. Once we can all do that, and I'm sure the folks here can attest to it, that's the huge relief factor there of escaping that prison and knowing that you can change, you can do these positive things and be of service. Now it's, how do I communicate that to those people who are here doing their job and letting them know this isn't a scam, that I'm not trying to, do some kind of con on you or something. That's the key. And it takes time. I'm not gonna, be shy about it. It takes time for those of us in uniform to look at it and say, okay, this is the real deal. But again, going back to our training and experience, that's our key. Our training and experience will tell us we've seen people that change. In every county jail and every prison system, guards and officers and deputies have seen positive change. Remember, positive change.
Beautiful. We have a couple more minutes for a couple more questions. Coach Johnny and G-Rep, do you guys have a couple of questions?
Yeah, great seeing you again, and I'm not in the back of a police car, so that's awesome. Yeah, it was great meeting you in the mail room and having you come out. You mentioned something that I think is really important is usually when somebody whether it's parole or leaves the county jail. They always have like a little bag of some of the letters they received, maybe some pictures, a phone book, and the opportunity that you're giving them and Coach Taylor and the rest of the GOGI community is they also get to stash some tools in there, some GOGI tools. And what that does is it makes it a safer community for everybody. You know, they say that probably close to 95 or a higher percent is going to get out of prison. We have a gentleman on the call who had a life without possibility of parole and got out of prison. He got out of prison because he's a transformed human being, and he did that through GOGI. So I want to thank you for your encouragement, for your leadership, and just allowing people to try something different, taking a chance. And it's, you know, you're kind of like a banker to a certain degree. You're investing in people instead of homes and cars and everything else. And I think the payoff is great. Coach Taylor invested in all of us, and not to toot our own horn, but I think we're pretty amazing, and we see life from a different perspective. I've been out of prison 5 years after serving 28 years, and I've noticed some people out here who've never been in prison who are actually in prison. And, you know, I want to hand them a book, but I don't carry books with me all the time. But just understanding like just a few words and being able to give somebody and you know, invest in my community by being an example. And thank you for being an example and allowing this community, and it'd be great to have another GOGI campus. And anything we could do to support you, let me know. Thank you so much.
All volunteers are welcome. All volunteers are welcome.
Well, here's the team. Here's the volunteer team. G-Rep Ernie, I would like you to first say hello to your Spanish-speaking students. G-Rep Ernie is our Spanish case manager. So G-Rep, if you wouldn't mind just saying, get closer to your phone. If you wouldn't mind, just pull the phone closer to you and then say a few words to your Spanish students. And then I'd like you to ask the captain a question before we kind of wrap things up.
Sure. Saludos aquí de parte de todos nosotros en GOGI, dejándolos saber que no nos olvidamos de ustedes y que le echen ganas a sus cursos para que puedan ir a tabla y presentarse bien. Muchas gracias. And the question that I had, and again, it's good to see him again. I remember meeting him at the mailroom, and my old habit way of thinking was run. Where's the door? when I looked at the door, I saw your boots and you were dressed. It brought back memories of a extraction. Anyway, you know, you actually answered it, and it's the one that I've been, you know, wanting to ask, and you have answered it. So that you say that you have seen change in the people that are taking it, and that's really good, because I know that your officers need to feel safe. And like Coach Taylor says, you know, if you can bring harmony to a place like that, it just makes everybody's job a lot easier. And you know, so you have seen inmates' attitude and the way that they carry themselves change while incarcerated when they study GOGI?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the change that I've witnessed throughout the years, I'm just going to use the word phenomenal, is I guess the best word to describe it, because it's created conversation.
Right.
People are asking each other questions. And it starts with the testimony. So again, it starts with somebody doing that self-inventory, getting up and speaking to the class, because we could all read a book and we could have an instructor, you know, talk about the book. But when it comes to sitting down in a setting and talking, if there's nobody facilitating that.
Sergeant, you're
okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. What I was saying was that it's that communication, it's that constant communication with, you know, both our deputies and the inmates, where once they realize that, hey, it takes a lot to get up and say something. That's kind of the biggest thing I've heard our deputies say and our officers is like, wow, it took a lot of guts for that guy to get up there or that gal to get up there and say what they said, you know, because you're in a vulnerable spot, right? You're putting out your business. You're talking about feelings and emotions. But people recognize that vulnerability and they respect it, and then it creates the dialogue. So for me, that biggest thing is that testimony of somebody getting up in a classroom setting and saying, this is what I read, this is what I learned, this is what's important to me. And then the next person and the next person. That facilitation is key. Instruction does nothing. Instruction does nothing for us. To sit there and just listen and yeah, we read the book and yeah, somebody's telling us these things, but if we don't practice it and we don't talk about it, because remember, some folks don't understand it. They won't get it the first time, and that somebody else telling us, well, no, this, check it out. This is how I interpret that. And this is what I got from it. Oh, now I get it. That makes sense to me. And it's the power of just us, dialoguing, that communication, and then taking that dialogue to a different place, and I've seen interaction here in LA County between inmates and deputies and custody assistants where they are actually in communication. It's dialogue. It's not us versus them. It's straight dialogue. This is my problem. This is why I keep coming back to jail. Here's my problem. I'm a dope fiend. I have a drug habit. This is why I rob. This is why I do that. Well, then why don't you do this? Well, it's easy for you to say, well, hold on, let's talk. What skill set do you have? Well, I'm pretty good at carpentry. Well, have you gone to the union? Have you done this? And that's the dialogue that's happening in LA County right now. We're talking about reentry on a whole new level. In LA County, we don't just release and say, see you. We're offering birth certificates and driver's license and, reentry, and how do we get you into a program? And if it's not a program, what vocational training can we get you? And, can we get you into housing? Do we need to put you in a shelter, or do you need, permanent supportive housing? What is it that you need? We're offering all that in LA County right now.
I'm happy to hear that. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's about our time. I just want to suggest to anybody who's watching this that you are the solution. You may think you're looking for the solution. You may think that an officer or a judge or a family member needs to be the solution, but in fact, you are the solution. If you show up with a smile, utilizing your GOGI tools, I promise you your day is going to be better, but the day will be better for everyone around you as well. So you need to be the light bearer. You need to shine the light. You need to show up as the solution, and things like GOGI campuses can pop up just about anywhere. Well, Captain Garcia, we are going to definitely be talking to you about setting up some volunteerism. We've got a wonderful panel of people who are more than interested to go in and teach them some GOGI life tools. So awesome. We will be reaching out to you to do that. We always close our meetings with the GOGI pledge, and I think the best way to work it is if I say the pledge and everybody else puts themselves on mute. That seems to be better. So if you guys go on mute, then we will have everybody repeating after me without a lot of feedback. So please repeat after me. May our commitment to the study of GOGI grant us the joy of giving and receiving, so our inner freedom may be of maximum service to those we love and infinite others. Okay, everybody turn your mics on and let's say thank you to Captain Garcia. We are so grateful. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
You guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
G-O-G-I, G-O-G-I. GOGI told me this, I got to do it.